Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Highwire Improv channel here on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to kick off our 8 o'clock Eastern block of programming with our weekly discussion panel show called Walking the Talk. And since this often brings in members of the community who may not be as familiar with Highwire, a brief introduction as to who we are. We are an online first improv theater company based in Baltimore, Maryland. We are relatively new. We were formed in September of this year in the midst of all of this. And we're really excited to be putting on shows, putting on workshops, which just went live for the first time today, as well as interacting and growing with the broader online and in-person improv community globally throughout 2020. Walking the Talk, the show you're viewing right now, is our weekly check-in with members of other theater companies who are trying to work through all of the details about doing improv better in 2020 and beyond. We're looking at very specific and tactical discussions on things like inclusion, diversity, sexual harassment, reporting policies, and also, what it's been like to move online this year and what comes to the future in 2021 and beyond. And we are really lucky to be joined by two wonderful guests today. If you both want to come on screen, I think I'm gonna have to ask you to start your video again since I turned it off briefly. Please welcome Kristen and Steve from Curious Comedy Theater in Portland, Oregon. We're so excited to have you. And I would love for each of you to do just a brief introduction about who you are, your improv history, your place within the Portland community, anything that comes to mind.
Awesome. Yeah, Steve, do you want to kick it off, or you want me to take it?
I can kick it off.
Great.
Let's see. My name, like I said, my name is Steve Dukes, and I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I live in Portland. Been living here and doing improv here for about 5 years now.
Right.
I am part of the JEDI Council at Curious, and JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so we're currently working on integrating a new kind of system at Curious Comedy that's it puts DEI or JEDI work at the focus, and we're kind of making all of our programming and our whole community structure around that JEDI work. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. That sounds fantastic.
Nice. My name's Kristen. I'm the co-artistic director at Curious. I also help run the training center.
Great.
And I started in Philly, so I am a East Coast, not a Portland native. I've been out here for like 2 years. I'm excited. I'm also on the JEDI Council, our DE&I committee, and excited to connect with Highwire about some of those things. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for being here. Really excited. I guess as an orientation, tell us a little bit about the Portland community. As a city, as a region, and as kind of the improv community in Portland. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the improv community in Portland, it's really well established, and
Yeah.
Steve's been in the Portland community a little bit longer than I have, so he may have some other insights, but there's a lot of incredible theaters in Portland that do improv either as their main thing or feature improv as some of their shows. So there were a number of theaters. Unfortunately, in recent, not because of the pandemic, although it wouldn't be surprising, in recent years some of those theaters have closed, but
Sure.
there's a lot of excitement about improv and a lot of engagement with it in the city. Steve, do you have anything to add about the Portland community? Yeah.
One of the things that stuck out to me, and I don't know if it's still the case, but when I first moved here, I read somewhere that Portland has more comedy venues than any other city.
Wow.
In the country. But I don't know if that's still the case, but it was exciting to me that Portland had such a strong artistic community.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, and it was interesting when I started doing improv. I found out soon after that I can do improv every night, multiple times a night.
That's the dream, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a dream. Yeah, improv and stand up comedy is improv, stand up, and comedy everywhere. So
It's fantastic. Awesome.
mhm.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and it's I've heard a lot of parallels drawn between Baltimore and Portland in the sense of it being oh, absolutely, yeah. Um, and the artistic community, the vibrancy of that community, and the number of different art forms. Like there's some cities that are like a music city, but I know like
Mhm.
Baltimore and Portland both have like big music scenes, big comedy scenes, big food scenes,
Mhm.
and just really adds
Mhm.
a lot to all those things working together when they can.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
great.
I enjoy that because it's the artistic community kind of supports each other because there's always an audience for one art or another, and even
Yeah,
if it's made up of other artists.
absolutely. Yeah, it's I read an article a little while back about, I think, from somebody in the Austin community who was describing this kind of isolation that can happen within arts, where like the improvisers just stay with the improvisers, and
Uh-huh.
even worse, the improvisers within one theater can just coalesce with the
Yeah.
improvisers of that theater, and that feels
Yeah.
like a big key to the future of how do we make sure that art in a city is interlinking those different communities, because there's a lot to share and add among them.
Yeah, we all need each other. Big time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
exactly.
um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
there we go.
yeah, and I
Um,
love Portland because it does have this very a highly local focus, right? And like um, yeah, it seems to be like there are a mix of people who are doing this professionally and
right,
people who enjoy it as a hobby. The big thing about being in Portland, from a Jedi perspective, from a Jedi Council perspective, so to speak, is that it is a demographically very white city, and
yeah,
so
Mhm.
yeah,
which doesn't mean that there aren't like black and brown people that live here. There are BIPOC communities here. We just have to in Portland make sure um, that we're connecting with those communities in a way that makes them feel valued, safe,
yeah,
and it's a little bit of a higher hill to climb here in Portland because of the
right,
historically racist background that the city has and that
right.
the state has. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, let me hold us there for a second so we can let one more guest in.
oh,
Uh,
amazing! Yeah,
yeah.
good. Morgan is on their way. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Great. We
Well,
have 5 people in the meeting.
yeah. Five people
Yay.
exactly. Uh,
Yeah.
excellent. And yeah. So uh, thank you for arriving in the middle of a discussion. I appreciate that. So hi, I'm Barry. We've never met before. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself just briefly as we get back into it?
Yeah.
My name is Morgan. I use they them pronouns, and I work with Kristen and Steve at Curious Comedy Theater.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you in this conversation. Just by way of introduction, we are having kind of a conversation about, tactical things we can do to be better improv theaters and work towards doing things more effectively in 2020 and 2021 and beyond. And excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you invited us on. I know that there was a lot of topics that maybe you were anxious to talk about. So I don't know if we should just jump right in.
Sure.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. No, let's do it.
I'm down for that.
When we were looking at, one of the things we did at the beginning of Highwire, because we didn't have an education program at first, was in this online world, we looked to other theaters that we felt we could trust were putting an environment in place that was going to be safe for people, that we would feel comfortable recommending them to. And one of the first classes we actually included in that list was Curious Comedy. And a big reason for it was when we looked at the class pages, I'm going to read it now. There was a blurb on every class, not just the intro class, not just the free class, but every class that says, this is an anti-racist, anti-misogynist, anti-ableist, anti-homophobic, anti-transphobic, anti-ageist class that strives to be inclusive of all experiences. We are always learning and aim to speak for everyone, which I thought was really great. It's very clear. It sets a tone. And I just wanted to ask, when did that start? And how did it come to be that that was something that was part of the class sign up?
Yeah. So that started through conversations that happened, back when people could, go to festivals these conversations have been bubbling up as they should be for a little while now, and just had a really great conversation with David Danella, who used to run the diversity, equity, and inclusion program at the Philly Improv Theater. He's since moved to LA, and is not involved with Philly Improv Theater anymore. But he was really educating me, educating a lot of people around him through these conversations at festivals, and he and John Gebratatios, who's I'm sure a name that you've heard, kind of leading some of this work. And John, John just said very simply, it's not enough to say that you're like, a space that wants to be nice for everybody, right?
Yeah.
You have to put it out there that you're anti-racist, because it's different. You can't just stand on the sidelines when this huge oppressive structure is actively working against people being included, right? So you have to actually go, put in the work to be anti-racist, to be against racism, and not just be like, oh, everything's great and fine, and we're just going to pretend that it's a level playing field for everybody, and everybody feels great all the time about what's going on, right? So that's something. And I was further confirmed in like the decision to post that on the website after reading Ibram X. Kendi's book about how to be an anti-racist, which is another thing that we've done at the theater. Just in our community, we have a book club where we are reading books that are focused on social justice, focused on issues of oppression and racism, and that's just something that, like, this terrible time has kind of gifted us, like, the space to like be reflective about this stuff. That's a lot of me talking, but I do want to open the floor to Steve and Morgan, because they have also, been really great in supporting that kind of work at Curious as well. So.
Yeah, I want to jump on some of that, what you said, with the yes ending, the idea of being anti-racist and making a statement. It's very important to make that statement, because like Kristen said, it's if it's business as usual, we all know business as usual is very racist, and that's just the system we live in. So making a statement is very, very important, and I think putting it as a focus as an organization, because the organizations are made up of people. And if we're going to say that everyone is included and everyone has a say, we kind of have to make that a focus, no matter what kind of organization we are, because every organization is made up of people. So making a strong statement and supporting other organizations that also make that strong statement, and kind of networking in that way is very important to feel as welcoming as possible as an organization.
So something that Kristen said that that struck a chord with me was that this time has given us space to do this work. And something that a statement like that does is it also holds all of us accountable to actually doing that work, because we're telling everybody that we are. So like something that this time has given us is like a lot of space to do this work, and it has also taken away space to put off doing the work. Like there's just
Yeah.
no more room to like pretend like things are fine. We're not giving ourselves that excuse anymore. And so having a statement for everybody to see everywhere, and then also developing systems for reporting so that like we can be held accountable by our community, and we can also hold our community accountable to those statements, is all very much wrapped up in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to say that I took a workshop, an anti-racist theater workshop with Nicole Brewer that I highly
Yep.
recommend.
It's very
Um,
good.
yeah, it is. It's really good. And she focuses on three baskets, right? Of like
Hmm.
harm prevention, harm reduction, and relationship repair.
Yeah.
And this for me kind of goes in the harm prevention, um, category, where if people see that they're not going to get away with bullshit
Yeah.
taking the class, then that's not the kind of people that we want to welcome into our community, right? So hopefully, even just having that posted kind of tells people whether or not this community is for them, right? Well, of
Yeah.
course, we want to be inclusive of a lot of different viewpoints, and we're always going to be learning stuff. But yeah, if that even just turns one, excuse my language, asshole away, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
absolutely. And it seems like in a lot of these conversations in improv and other, walks of, parts of our lives, somebody asks the question, well, what if that drives people away? What if that turns people off? And the answer is great. Like
Yeah.
we don't want them. That's the point, right? It's just as much to make sure that people who don't feel that those values aren't able to come in and cause harm, that they otherwise might. So I really like that that framing of it.
Yeah, there's a paradox, right, of tolerance.
Mm,
You get to a point that in order to have a society that is tolerant, you come up against things that you cannot tolerate. So
yeah,
in order for that to be the case, so there is a paradox there. But I'm absolutely fine with that being a gateway, like a gate that people have to pass through in order to be part of our community that is intended to be safe and respectful of everyone.
absolutely.
Yeah, I also want to add like maybe having a kind of or air of open door, or not not open door, but a swinging door
Yeah.
policy. Like as soon as someone is ready to play ball and play and participate and actively take on the rules of being part of the organization, they're always welcome back.
That's great. Yeah.
It's not like it's totally like once you break a rule, you're done forever. It's life is about redemption and learning one's mistakes, and sometimes it takes time. So we want to respect that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thought. It's one of the things we've been talking about in our organization is, these models of community justice that have a focus on people who are the perpetrators of harm, the victims of harm, as well as the overall community. And a lot of the actions that may be the easiest or most obvious to take, and this is a big like aha moment for me, was like it's straightforward to put a reporting process in place for somebody who's been the victim of harm. It's less straightforward to have that result in a community conversation that both has the perpetrator learn from that behavior, protects the person who was harmed, and informs the community on how to prevent this in the future. That's a much higher level kind of step to take. And, it's difficult, right? And figuring out the mechanics and the interpersonal relationships that go into that is very, very new to a lot of people. But we also come from a background where we have a lot of tools that could be useful for those types of conversations, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And that's why transparency, I think, is like really important. And, I've been learning about the difference between calling people out and calling people in, right? And also I've had conversations with theater runners before where like, maybe there's just a little whisper of some inappropriate behavior. And one way to just nip it in the bud is just confront the person and say, hey, I've heard such and such. What's your response? And, just so they know that something is going on, and that, obviously that's very informal. But when you develop rapport and you have that transparency, you can, everybody kind of is accountable in the community, and it might not always take some highly formalized system to get somebody to realize, like, oh, I've caused some harm here, and I can, take steps to repair that.
Yeah.
Transparency and publicly failing.
Yeah,
I think
right.
that goes with transparency. Like, I made a boo-boo and not sweeping it under the rug. Like, oh, I don't want anyone to see this. I want everyone to see this because I don't want anyone to make the same mistake. Growing up in my house, I learned a lot from my older brother. All his mistakes, I was like, I'm not doing any of that.
Right.
So it helped me a lot. Like, there was a commercial in the 90s about crash test dummies. And it was like this commercial. I can't remember which car company it was, but the car crashed and the test dummy goes flying in the commercials. You could learn a lot from a dummy. Like, you're true, you can. You can learn a lot from a dummy.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, and this is all kind of connecting to a point I wanted to pick up on that you were saying, Morgan, about this all has to lead to kind of some kind of real process for reporting, and I'm curious, what you and the community have thought about in terms of making that better. We've been thinking about how to make the formal process better, but to this discussion also, how can we make it part of the informal culture to discuss these things when they come up in the same kind of comfort level that we do with like regular improv notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a project that we're tackling from a few different angles. There's like, we're trying to develop a reporting system and like include it open in our open communication of what's to be expected. And then we also are working with like a timeout system so that folks in classes and also just folks in general, hopefully, can like pause a scene or an interaction that feels gross for some reason. It can be anything from I don't like the way you were talking about like this space or these people, or it could be like you misgendered me, or it could be like that was racist or whatever it is, and developing a system for learning that process from each other and practicing it regularly so that like it eventually just becomes comfortable because we have a structure for it and we know how to facilitate that conversation in a way that is accessible, and then also just leans into our existing skill set, which is like thinking about things in terms of like how is this a scene, how is this a note, how is this theater, and having it also be just like real life. And so our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and Steve is like working on this project in particular. So you can speak to it more probably, but we're thinking about having like a troupe that's just like the DE&I improv troupe, and they could like use improv to facilitate this skill set and make it community-wide. But I don't know, Steve, do you want to maybe talk about it? You feel interested?
I mean, that's pretty spot on. I think one of the main tools of this team is to teach the idea of the timeout and oops and ouch moments. During the timeout, where we want to teach the every member on the team to be able to facilitate a timeout and an oops and ouch discussion. And take that into every other improvised situation, and hopefully I love improv because of its practicality for real time relationships and conversations. Everything that I learned at improv class, I use regularly on a regular basis. So it's very, very it's interesting using that as a tool, and then bringing in the timeout and the oops and ouch moment to give a teachable moment in real time. I feel like that could lead to someone doing it off stage in real life on the street. Like, oh, wait a minute, the timeout. Let's discuss this thing that you just said.
I are you thinking of those three things as different? Like because I've heard other communities say things like an oops a moment, but are those just three words that you can use for the same activity, or there's actually three distinct things?
So I think the way like that we're trying to implement timeout is, first of all, we let the students know that they can call one. When we send out our original invitation to the class, they get like a slideshow that
Nice.
tells them about the community agreements, like basically, hey, we're gonna behave in this way. These are the class conduct rules or agreements. Trying to move away from using rules and more, these are things that we agree on.
Mhm.
And the timeout is included in that. And so
Yeah.
it's another thing to actually have students feel empowered to do it. And so that is something that we're working on. And also our comfort level with our instructors. Because
Yeah.
I know a lot of times I'll be comfortable calling a timeout, but a lot of times I'm oriented towards the person who made the mistake and
Interesting.
empathizing with them rather than the person that gets impacted by the mistake, which I think is the wrong orientation, right? Because basically I feel very embarrassed for this person. And I also like know that like, oh gosh, if they're a good person, they probably didn't intend this at all. And like all this stuff starts bubbling up in me. So that's like work that I have to do to like just say, hey, time out. What you said wasn't cool. If I want this person to be able to express how they may have been impacted by that statement. And then, maybe you can have your oops moment of like, I apologize. I didn't mean for it to come across that way, but I also acknowledge the impact that it made, right? Like, or whatever that conversation is. There's going to be a case by case scenario. And if students aren't comfortable having that moment right then and there in the class,
Mhm.
we do want to encourage them to either talk to their instructor or someone else. We're also trying to work on getting a student advocate, which is something that was brought up in the Black Improv Alliance meetings.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's do that. So maybe somebody on our Jedi Council DE&I committee is going to be in the position of being an advocate for all of our students and being an ear for any of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing that we've been thinking about is setting up a reporting system where there's just like a lot of different avenues for talking about what's happened. And
Yeah.
something we've been thinking about is like who on the Jedi Council would be available for that kind of support work, and like having that information readily available so that like if someone has experienced something that like is very particular to like the Black experience, they have someone who's going to understand and they can go to. Or if someone
Yeah.
has something that's particular to being like genderqueer and they need to talk to a genderqueer person, like
Yeah.
there's someone on the council who can be there for them. So like also just having it not be like, okay, now you have to talk to the artistic director.
Right.
Right.
But
Yeah. A
I mean,
peer, right? Like somebody who feels more like, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully people aren't intimidated, but we know that they could be reasonably intimidated to talk to either
Right.
the teacher or, the artistic director or something, or there's some sort of embarrassment. They don't want to stir up, something because they feel like it might be negative for them in the future if they want, to
Yeah.
keep engaging at Curious. So we want to alleviate that, fear. So yeah, it's great. Well said, Morgan. Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, it's an area that we've been thinking about. We're also in the process of kind of making a reporting structure that's more formalized than you can submit to this Google form or you can submit to this email. And we've been talking about these reporting processes are often built with the organization in mind. They're built to provide legal protection, or especially in large companies, that they're built to protect the organization and do just enough for the people reporting the issues that there's you reduce the risk of being sued, which is of course the wrong priority. And we're thinking about what other forms of agency do we need to provide to the reporter, whether that's I want this to be anonymous and I don't want any further discussion about it, or I want to report this to you and I want you to know it came from me, but please don't investigate. Please don't make a thing out of this. Thinking about, what are all the different decisions that we should put in front of somebody who is reporting something. And I really like that one, is finding a directed experience to somebody who is, likely to be able to be more attuned to those specific issues you're raising.
Yeah.
And not having and being flexible, I think is probably the best way, because it's allowing an avenue for anybody that is going to want to use it. Like, you could reach us on Instagram, and you could find us over here, and you can call, and maybe everybody. I envision everyone on our team could answer a phone at some point. Right. It's not everyone, is on call all the time, but whatever it requires. But if someone's like, hey, take the HR or the Jedi phone for the weekend, in case someone has a grievance.
Yeah, and something that Stacy has implemented at Curious from the beginning is this code, which is frustrated. Like, I'm frustrated, and if you come to Stacy with that code, she has promised, like, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to communicate with you about this. So, having just very transparent, multiple, like Steve said, flexible avenues because we don't want people hiding under rocks, right? That are that are either being hurt, right, or hurting other people in our community. So let's get some sunlight in there and make a lot of ways for people to feel like they can communicate about stuff. And we have to develop a stamina for these conversations, right? Like, another thing that we do tell people about in that package that we send out as an introduction to our class is communicating about access needs as well. So taking from Nicole Brewer's workshop, which maybe Barry you're familiar with, since you seem to be, like, just having that check-in at the top of every class, like, and people just being able simply to say, my access needs are being met, I have access needs and I'm tending to them, or these are my access needs, and bringing them to the community, and then the community can see what they can do to help support the learning with those access needs, right? So and my level 2 class, with the regular asking of that, started putting it on their Zoom name so that it's just there. And, like, you don't want you want to be sure that you're connecting and checking in with everyone at the top of class, but sometimes it can take a while, so having this is like a nice way for those who are able to do it, like, to quickly understand where somebody's at on the ready to learn scale. And it's great. It's just a really fast way to quickly check in about that and make people feel safe to bring those needs that they have to the community, and not like they're the odd person out for having to say, hey, wait a minute.
Exactly. These structured conversations make it an easier task for people.
And everyone has to check in, right? Because so you don't get to be like, I'm good, right? Like, or nipping in the bud right away anybody who's kind of dismissive of that check-in, or in some way making fun of it, the same way that people have kind of used that to harm people when we do it with pronouns or that, like, you have to just be very firm at the top as an instructor. That's not going to be acceptable at all,
That comes up with us when it has come up in the past when we've done boundary check-ins, before jams, or even just as a troop, and that there's that repeated model of, you create a space for everybody to share, and you take seriously what that step is for everybody, even if you don't have a lot of particular needs to bring to the table that time. And it kind of comes back to the other part of, these timeouts about doing practice. One of the things we've been doing during our jams, which are all online right now, is still having people state their physical boundaries, even though they don't really make any sense in virtual space. Just getting people comfortable with saying, I don't like to be hugged in scenes. It starts to build that muscle of, this is something I just do.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I think check-ins are important across the board in that way, because we're all individuals, and our special needs are what makes us individuals.
Yeah.
And those special needs and our individuality is what we bring to our improv.
Right.
So it's like the access is part of the special need. It's part of the things that we need to be completely present here.
Yeah.
In a conversation, in a relationship, in an improv class.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually also really like the idea of practicing boundary setting in a virtual space where the stakes are too low. Because a lot of us maybe don't have a lot of experience doing that with groups of people that are newer to us. And so, like having a platform to just like test it out and see what it feels like to say those things about yourself, where like no one can actually really disrespect your boundaries. Like you're not putting as much on the line.
Right.
I think that's a good exercise. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like it as well. Yeah, and even though we're in a virtual space, there are still things that are particular that can take people out of a scene or out of a moment. And that's part of like what we do is we have kind of these general community agreements that are the expectations that we set for all of our classrooms and all of our teachers, but then the teachers at the first class get to set specific community agreements for that particular class and take the time to kind of understand and learn what people are comfortable or not comfortable with as a rule, because then you get to define the sandbox that you can safely play in. And once you define that, people look at boundaries as limiting them, but it actually just like makes you very sure of where you can focus your energy and how you can play with people instead of being uncertain with new people about what is okay, what is not, what's going to take you out of the scene, what's not. And it's good to know for yourself as well. Like I've surprised myself sometimes with those boundary check-ins where I've had a moment to think about it and say, oh yeah, today, none of this, please. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been like kind of a relief. I didn't realize that there was this anxiety coming with me into that particular rehearsal or class until that moment. And it's such a relief to share that with the community and to know that, people have a better chance of not touching a sore spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to think of boundaries as the fence around the runway. Like
It's
the whole runway, and we can take off and fly and go into the atmosphere, but we have to do it from the runway. We can't go off into the woods and start to fly.
Right. You can't play football on a field the size of New York City. You have to have those out of bounds, right? That's what makes the game actually playable.
Right.
Without it, you can't really. Yeah. So.
Yeah, excellent. One of the other things you mentioned, kind of as we were getting settled before we started, was a promotional video that you did. And I think it fits into the theme of being very upfront about the stance that Curious Comedy is taking and making that clear to people who might want to join, and knowing that that's a safe community to be a part of. Could you all talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we're all waiting to who wants to take the floor. Yeah, Steve, anything you want to share?
So our promotional video, it is a way of, it starts as a way of welcoming everybody to the Curious family. It kind of lays the foundation in the framework for the boundaries that a person is going to encounter when they come into the Curious family. And it very much starts with the idea of inclusivity, and through the focus of our Jedi work.
Yeah.
And it's more of a promotion for, well, I guess it's less of a promotion and more of an education for people coming into Curious. And it's promotion because it's free. Everyone can watch this video and be like, oh wow, this is some good information. And it promotes not just Curious, but it promotes the idea of the Jedi work that we're doing at Curious.
Yeah, I think it's just a video. Go. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, I thought you were. Finished your thought.
I take long, but I talk like Obama sometimes. The idea that the work doesn't just stop at the Curious doors. Like the things that we're doing here is good for everyone, no matter what their background is, where they're going in life. If they don't want to be performers at all, I think the techniques that we're trying to incorporate at Curious can be beneficial for everybody.
Definitely.
Yeah, we just wanted to upfront let people know like what some of the things are that we have set as, you know, guidelines for the best participation in our community. So this is also something that we felt like we had time and space to do.
Yeah.
And Curious has this amazing access to great video equipment. We have all this high definition cameras, and it's something I think we can do with a group of people safely is shoot these videos. So, you know, we can have one or two people in the space, you know, everybody's safe, and create some of this content. And then it'll go into that harm prevention basket where you really can't say that you didn't know.
You didn't know, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like a way to bring the community agreements into a format that is really digestible and it kind of like fun. So like we're hoping to maybe put it into like we want to facilitate it in an improv style maybe. So like we're speaking the language of the people. They're invested. They love it. It's gonna like have comedy. It's like gonna be what we do.
Yeah.
So just like again, like weaving in like the art form that we all love, and also the expectations that we have of everybody to be kind, and also to be informed about what being kind looks like. So it's like you could give everybody like the code of conduct or the community agreements, and they could like sign a waiver.
Yep.
Or they could have like this video that they're probably gonna actually watch and like get through, and we can like show at the beginning of like classes or at the beginning of our jams, so we know that everybody like sat through it, like we saw them do it. So
that's
like
nice.
a higher accountability practice there too.
Yeah, that's the goal. We're still working on getting this video out. It is going to be a long time coming, but we have a lot of energy behind it and a lot of enthusiasm for it. So yeah,
that's fantastic.
Another point that I just want to throw in there that the way that we want to educate is we want to educate teachers. Yeah. We want to educate people in the way that they're going to take it and be like, okay, I can now, I feel comfortable passing this information on. I played this game of timeout and work within the teachable moment, and they take it and they practice it so much within the class, within the improvised framework, that they're comfortable going home and teaching it to their kids or their spouse or their, or people that they encounter.
Yeah, other groups that they're active with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. I think that's a lovely thing to end on. And I want to thank you all for a really, really rich conversation. This has been great. Really inspired and impressed by the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to see the video at some point. I hope it has a lot of Portland references that I don't understand. As we close out, would just love to hear if any of you have anything you want to plug, shows, work that you're doing, and if anybody comes to mind that we should talk to outside of your community, somebody else that you know who is doing good work in this space, would love to hear a shout out for them as well.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in and say that Curious' next session of classes happens in the new year, January 4th. And since everything's virtual now, like obviously take class with Highwire. They're, it's brand new and awesome. But if you're looking for to figure out what Curious's vibe is, come take class with Curious. You can do
Great.
both. It's not an either or situation. And we also have a fundraiser coming up, because times, and that'll be in February. So be on the lookout for more information about that right around Valentine's Day. So it's called Love Fest. And a recommendation of someone to talk to if you haven't yet is maybe Coco Galore. Have you heard of Coco or talked with Coco yet?
I have heard of them. I have not talked with them.
Yeah, so Coco is the artistic director up at Bad Dog in Toronto,
Yeah.
and she's incredible. So yeah, I total recommend with Coco. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
Let's see. Promotion. Let's see.
Yeah.
teesforallartists.com. Everyone going by a Yes and t-shirt.
Oh,
Awesome.
love that. Love that.
Yeah. That's my contribution.
Nice.
Excellent.
I was wondering if y'all have already talked about John.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did. Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
John Gebratatios, yeah,
Yep.
for sure. And Alce.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
that was gonna be my recommendation. But yeah, other than that, as you said, that Curious is up to. That's what I got.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much just in this conversation, and we'd love to have any and all of you back for another one of these in the future if something of note comes up, especially when the video comes out. We'd love to promote that if it's something that you share beyond Portland. If not, I would just love to see it because it sounds really cool. And thank you so much for what you're doing for improv and for people everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Barry. This is incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much. I enjoyed this. This was awesome.
I'm so glad to hear that. And we'll see each other around the improv circuits online, I'm sure. Thank you for everyone watching at home. This has been Walking the Talk, and drive home safe. And we'll see you
Hi,
next
everyone. Thank
Take
you.
care,
Bye.
everyone.